Hi folks, well, interesting times in the pandemic world that we live in. As many people have probably heard, Trump has taken rather a bold move and nationalised the Fed. Interesting turn of events, I would say, for many people. It could go any way from this point, it really could. Quite an unprecedented move, folks, nationalising the Fed, putting it all back in the hands of the Treasury. So Trump is essentially the new head of the Federal Reserve. What's going to happen now? You know, there's been a lot of talk around the truth community that this is a great thing, and all the Q-tubers are cheering. A lot of people are saying we're going to go back to a gold standard. Now again, I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the human perspective, you know, what's really happening to the people while this is going on. Like I said, there's a lot of people who've been losing their jobs, a lot of people stranded in foreign countries, a lot of small businesses going down. You know, lots of stuff going on, folks, which is reasonably unprecedented. And there has been talk recently in amongst political circles in the United States of introducing a digital currency. So the question would be, are we really going to be shifting to a gold standard, or are we going to be shifting to something like a digital currency? That's an interesting question to ask, it really is. Maybe look at some of the scenery here, folks. We'll just flip this camera around. Have a look at some of this stuff. This is the general area where I live. This is just up the mountain from me. There's a place called TrumpCoin Mountain. That over there is, I'm not quite sure what that mountain's called. Might be able to see through there. That's Mount Kugel, the double peaks through there. I don't know if you can see it very well. Beautiful little lagoon down the bottom there as well. Beautiful place. But yeah, this is a very, very interesting turn of events, folks. The fact that Trump has nationalised the Fed. This is quite unprecedented. It really is. Like I said, it could go in any direction from this point. Be interesting to see where it is going to go. But you know, things aren't changing very well on the ground for us so far. I mean, we've still got the same sort of situation that we're facing the other day. And you know, very interesting. There's a report that came out to show that not only has the virus been downgraded, and I put out a report, the last report I put out, I mentioned to you that the virus has actually been downgraded. They did this on March 19. They downgraded it from, you know, like it was no longer a infectious disease of concern according to the UK health authorities. They did this on March 19. Since then, there's been another report that has come out. The doctors, the experts have realised that a lot of their estimates were wrong, and the estimation they had of 500 deaths per billion or something, I can't remember the number, like I'm pulling it out of the air here, but it was like 500,000 deaths or something. They've dropped that down to about 20,000 deaths. So, you know, we're not hearing any of this from the media, we're not hearing any of it from our governments, and we're still seeing military out on our streets, and, you know, this whole, you know, martial law takeover that we're seeing, and that's really what's happening, folks. We've got military that have basically taken over the international airports here. When I say taken over, I mean they're there, and we're told that they are assisting the police in their duties and making sure the quarantine actions are carried out. But really, it's the first steps of seeing military martial law on the streets here. And, you know, with Trump seemingly supporting the introduction of a vaccine and all the things that he's doing, you've got to wonder what his stance is on this. I mean, it's all very well nationalising the Fed, but that works great in socialism and communism as well. So, you know, whether it's really Trump and the Patriots the way they're saying, or whether there's a deeper play here, that's what I think people need to be looking at, because, you know, the human suffering that's being carried out in order to replace the Fed the way they're saying it, it's just a bold move to replace the Fed and take down the deep state and all that sort of stuff. You know, the amount of suffering we're seeing to make this happen is pretty unprecedented, and, you know, you can't really say that it's justified. You know, this amount of suffering is never justified, because the world's never going to go back to the way it was. Even if they were to switch it all off right now and say, okay, pandemic's over, everyone can go back to work. There's so many businesses that have gone down now. It's absolutely incredible. And the bullion sales have been through the roof. I went onto the bullion dealer that I normally look at this morning, and I was actually shocked to see that there is virtually no coins left. There is no small silver bullion left. There's only kilo blocks and things like. I couldn't believe it, the amount of bullion that must have been sold in the last week. So people can really see what's coming. And the fact that Trump has now nationalized the Fed, this is going to have repercussions around the entire world, the entire banking system across the whole world, because it all runs in the back of the Fed. I mean, the central bank here in Australia, the Federal Reserve Bank here in Australia, or the Australian Reserve Bank, whatever it's called. I mean, this is going to have repercussions with this because it all relates to the Fed. So anybody who thinks that the US dollar is going to last, I mean, Trump's basically ensured that it can't. They're going to have to introduce some sort of new currency. You know, like I said, there's a lot of talk that this will be a gold-backed currency, but I don't know. I think that they may use this opportunity to introduce a digital currency. Now, all they've got to do is keep the activists at bay and keep everyone appeased, which is what the Q-tubers are doing, and what the whole Q movement seems to be doing, just basically keeping people appeased. So, you know, it can go any direction from this point, folks, but we're moving into very, very interesting times, and we're already essentially in martial law in this country now, you know, here in Australia. I mean, the government has basically put the military and the police in charge of operations. They've enacted this, you know, Bioemergency Act, which is quite draconian, and we've seen similar steps in England. And since the government's done that, now they've gone on holiday until August. Basically, they're taking time out until August. Interestingly, they're not self-isolating. The politicians and the police and the military don't have to self-isolate. When people arrive in the country, they have to go and self-isolate. New arrivals actually have to go to a hotel now, escorted by the military. And these hotels are not 5-star, folks. You go there and you get pretty low treatment while you're in this isolation stage. And yet the airline staff don't have to self-isolate, and they go all over the place. So, you know, a lot of this, I think, is just about keeping people apart from each other. And this will promote sickness as well. You know, like, we need to be out in the country. We need to be associating with people. We need to be not washing our hands 10 times a day, the way they're getting people to do, because our immune system needs to have practice. That's the way it is. It needs practice, folks. You know, point to note is that when the scientists go to Antarctica and they are isolated for 3 to 6 months away from the Western world, they're just locked in their base in Antarctica, in the ice, very sterile environment around them. There's not too many germs out there in the ice, and they're only associating with the scientists that are there with them, usually just half a dozen people or something. When these people go back to their respective countries, they always get sick. And the reason is because they've been isolated from the normal germs and bacteria that exist in society. So they always get sick when they go back into society. So if you're going to get all these people, you're going to isolate them for weeks on end. When we all get back into society and start mingling with each other, everybody's going to get sick. That's the way it works. You know, you shouldn't be washing your hands 10 times a day. You shouldn't be putting bacterial wipes on your desk all the time and on your bench all the time. It's been proven that if you use those antibacterial wipes and you're wiping your bench all the time, all you're doing is putting down a low amount of bacterial agent there, and you're basically building up the immune system of all the bacteria. So they become immune to all this stuff. So then none of the real stuff that we want to use against them works. You've got to look at how this works, folks. I mean, bacteria have immune systems the same as we do, the same as anything does. And if you're in a completely sterile environment, then your immune system is not getting any practice, and therefore you're going to get sick really easily. That's the way it works, folks. I've traveled to over 130 countries in my life. I've been traveling for a lot of my life. I did a lot when I was younger, then I had a big break, and then I traveled a lot again, you know, in my later life. Since 2012, I've been pretty well traveling. 2011, 2012, I've been pretty well traveling solidly. I've been to over 135 countries. I've never had any vaccinations, and I never get sick. That's just the way it is. Occasionally I get a bit of a flu, but that's just the way it is. I mean, you know, this happens just because you run down. When you're on the road, you tend to not eat properly. And by isolating people like this, they're going to be causing so many problems in people, not just with the bacteria, the way I said, making people susceptible to diseases by, you know, lowering their immune systems, but also the psychological damage that they're doing to people through all this as well. Just isolating people, telling them they can't have human contact, they can't go outside, they can't, do the things they normally do. They've got to be isolated from the rest of the world. It's absolutely horrendous, folks. And, there's a whole major play going on here that a lot of people just aren't looking at. And there's so many aspects to it. And you've got to take all of this into account when you're thinking, well, this is all great and this is all about bringing down the deep state. Because I think there's a lot more to it than that. Sure, it's great Trump's bringing down the Fed. But I don't know, I have a really hard time seeing any politicians as friends, seeing any of them as being on our side. It just doesn't make sense to me, folks. I don't think that any of these people have our best interests at heart. I think they're all bought and paid for. They're all hand-picked. We get to elect people. We don't get to select who we elect. And, that's the problem. And what is the new election even going to look like? Will there even be an election? How can you have an election in this type of environment when we've got virtual martial law in our countries, lines of tanks parked in LA, like downtown LA on a train? You could think, well, maybe they're just moving through, but I don't know. Downtown LA, it's very bizarre, folks, the amount of troop movement we're seeing around the world. Troops on the streets here. I'm fully expecting this country to lock us down as well, the way they have other countries. The government's saying they're not going to do it. That's always a good sign that they are going to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be mentioning it to begin with. But they're really pushing this, folks. Like I said, even though the pandemic, the virus has been downgraded, the estimates have been downgraded. We're not seeing anything like, even with the seasonal flu, we're not seeing even the amount of deaths that we would see with the seasonal flu with this so-called deadly virus, And viruses, folks, if you look into them, viruses can't be transmitted from person to person. Viruses can't be transmitted from animals to animals. Viruses are basically stuff that they are basically rubbish, which is squeezed out of cells when they get sick. Viruses are produced in your body and they can't be transmitted. They're not alive. They don't think. They don't go off and infect everything. We're given this concept that viruses are alive, and we're fed movies like Contagion and this and that. All these movies that they give us about these deadly viruses and all these things. You won't find that anyone's going to get this virus until they inject it into them, and you'll find that people will start getting sick once they roll the 5G out and they start changing the electromagnetic field again. And again, I urge you to watch the video that I recommended last time by Dr. Thomas Cowan. I hear people knocking him as well, but then I hear people knocking everybody. But the information that he puts out there and the timeline that he presents is very, very compelling. So I urge you to look at that. And there's other doctors as well. There's a lot of people that have been talking about how viruses actually do work and the fact that they can't be transmitted the way our governments are telling us. So, this could have been, it could be that there's two factions there. This could have been the big play that we were saying it was, and then Trump could have stepped in and done this little sidestep to take over the Fed the way he's done. But you've got to understand, he may have his motivations as well. And like I said, it's a good step into socialism or communism. Trump's real allegiances lie with the state of Israel more than anything else. That can be seen by his actions. So you've got to wonder where it's going to go, whether there'll even be an election. Trump could set himself up as the king of America with this one, folks. Now he controls the military, he controls everything. With the new laws that have come in, he's got powers that people wouldn't even believe that he has at the moment. And now that he's in control of the Fed as well, he's in control of the money system, he's in control of the military. He's a pretty powerful man at the moment. So, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, and it could go in any direction. Very, very interesting turn of events, though. Quite unpredictable. You didn't see that one coming. I didn't see it coming. I don't think too many people saw him actually taking over the Fed and nationalising the Fed the way he did. Like I said, it could be a good thing, but is any type of nationalisation a good thing? It's always a good path to socialism, isn't it? It's always a good path to a welfare state. And I can see a big move towards a welfare state with everything that's happening. That's a lot of what these stimulus packages are all about. Getting people dependent upon handouts from the government, getting people used to it, getting people, okay with it. So, you've got to really wonder where all this is going, folks. But anyway, that's about all I wanted to share with you today. Thank you to all the people who send me so many kind emails and so many messages. Listen, I've got so many messages on Facebook. I simply cannot keep up with my Facebook messages. It's kind of daunting. Facebook takes a long time to load, so I've got to put up with that. And I wake up in the morning and I look and I've got 65 messages on my Facebook page, and I've got 2 Facebook pages, and that's 65 messages that I've got this morning. That adds to the other 200 messages that I've got there. I've just got so many messages on Facebook. I've got so many emails to get through. I'm trying to get through them all. Facebook is not a good place to message me. I don't go onto Facebook that often. It's better to send me emails through the website, but again, even that takes me a long time because I'm kind of, it's a one-man show, and it's just very difficult for me to get the time to answer all this stuff. I've got so much information coming in, so I do apologize for that. But thank you to all the kind words that people send me. Thank you to all the information that people are sending me, from all the different countries that are in lockdown, and there's so many, so many countries are in lockdown now. It's more, you've got a shorter list to name the countries that aren't in lockdown. Interesting, Russia isn't in lockdown, and China isn't in lockdown anymore, and there's not even really been any cases reported in Russia, and I think that should be very telling for people as well. But anyway, thank you for all the information that people send me, and thank you to all the people who support me on Patreon. I couldn't do any of this if it wasn't for you. I do expect that we will get locked down soon, so I'm not sure how long or how much longer I'll be able to do these walk and talks. You never know what they're going to do. I'll probably come out and do them anyway, even if we are locked down, because it's a nice area. I mean, it is a beautiful space where I live, folks. This whole area is beautiful. I'll give you another look. Even the road here where I'm standing next to the car. Don't know what happened then, folks. I turned it off and didn't mean to. Yeah, this is just the road here. Australia's a beautiful country. It really is. It should be back on me now. There we go. So yeah, so that's about the size of it, folks. But that's about all I wanted to bring for you today. I'll probably bring you another report soon. I'll try to get these out daily or bi-daily, or every couple of days or whatever. I think it's good to let people know that we're safe and let people know what's going on. So I'll try to bring them to you as much as I can. The kookaburras and the wildlife agree. But it's been great talking to you, folks. I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. Please take good care until then, everybody. I do love you all, and please stay safe in Lakesh.